I genuinely feel bad for that young man. Like, if we think about it, the guy doesn't even have a name. He's just the young man. And, oftentimes we think of this gospel passage as the passage about the rich young man, right? But the reality is like he never had a name. And a name is more than just a title. It's more than just the way we address someone. A name, especially in the Bible, in those times, was an identity. This man never had an identity for God. He was never truly known by God as, he was just a young man. He was just one more person in the crowd. And, this man, he went away sad because he said no to Jesus. And it's kind of sad because, he probably wasn't a bad guy. I mean, he kept the commandments. He basically said, all of these commandments I've observed. But then he says, what do I still lack? There was this sense of lacking, of missing something in his heart. He was a good man, he completed the commandments, and yet there was something more in his heart, that this restlessness that he couldn't shake. And so that's why he asked the question to Jesus, what do I lack? How do I gain eternal life? There's still this emptiness in my heart. And Jesus, what he calls him to do is he calls him to take a radical step of generosity. A radical step of generosity. Sometimes Jesus breaks into our life and he does the same. Maybe we're good Catholics, maybe we go to daily Mass, but then Christ calls us to something radical, to give up everything. Now for this man, it says he went away sad, for he had many possessions. Maybe they were material things, maybe it was money. And for us, it could be the same, but it could be really anything. Any attachment that we have in our heart, anything that's an obstacle to taking that step of radical generosity, that is our possessions. Those are our possessions. That is what is hindering us from following the Lord truly with our whole hearts. It could be a thing, it could be a person, it could be an activity, it could be anything. But we too have possessions, we too have attachments. Many of the saints who speak about this passage and speak about just the spiritual life in general talk about how there is oftentimes an initial conversion in our lives when we discover who God is and we want to love him and we start to look for God in our lives. But then there's another moment where God asks for a second conversion. A second conversion. A radical step where we don't hold anything back, where we don't just do the minimum like the rich young man and completes the commandments, but we actually give ourselves in love completely, totally, without calculating. That's what made the saints saints. And so all of us have to make that decision in our hearts. What are we going to give to God? What are we willing to give up to follow God? And, these saints, when they talk about that second conversion, they say most people never make that step. Christ calls them to something more and they go away sad because they have many riches in their heart. I think the question is, how are we going to respond when Christ makes that call on us? Will we be like that young man who never had a name, never had an identity? Or will we give up everything to follow Christ?